Today, I have the gorgeous Genevieve Searle on the Awaken Feminine podcast. She's joining me from the Gold Coast in Australia. Welcome to the show.
Hey.
And you gotta love her hat. It's just, I just love it. Oh, I love it.
I had someone say once on a podcast, was like, "Oh my goodness, you're wearing my favorite color, sparkles."
Yeah. Well, my favorite is gold and black together at the moment, like recently. So, yeah, you're wearing it for me. I know.
I'm wearing it.
So before we dive in, Genevieve, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our audience, who you are and what you do.
It's always such a big question.
I
It's like, how do
know.
you snapshot
Can
who
you
you are? It's like
briefly as
so
well
level.
so that we can dive in later?
Totally. So my name is Genevieve Searle. I'm a mama, I'm a lover, I'm a dancer. And for my passion business / all of the things that I offer to the world, I work as an epigenetics mentor for specifically for self, relationship, and also some team optimization. I am a mama of 3 sons, and I've been with my partner for 20 years. And I'm also a 3 times best-selling author, co-author, yes, and a TEDx speaker. So I think that covers the big tick boxes.
Yeah. So excited to talk to you. Because as you know, our ex-pharmacist here, so I'm not ex-pharmacist, not registered anymore, but just loving what you do around epigenetics. So we'll dive into that. But this is the most important question I always feel. Before we really dive right in, what is your definition of an awakened feminine?
Oh, it is such a good question. Oh, I feel it's when we have moved through all the layers of who we think we should be, and we actually get to the gritty, beautifully messy, wild and wise depths of ourselves, and can show up with a deep embodied connection to our hearts, our womb, the earth, in our authenticity. So whatever form it takes, and it can be anything from, this real mother kind of archetype to a warrior, and anything in between. But it's when we become deeply embodied and have integrated usually a lot of our shadows, which we all have, and learn how to dance with all parts of ourselves in a deeply authentic way.
That's such a beautiful definition. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Now, Genevieve, let's dive into more about you. I'm really interested in how you got into epigenetics, because I know that you were, doing deep inner work and helping people before. You were a holistic wellness coach, kind of, yeah. And then, moving into epigenetics. I'd just love to know how you got into that.
It's actually quite a long story. I remember sitting on the couch of my parent. Well, actually, backtrack a bit further. When I was 18, I experienced rape, and that was on the back of sexual abuse when I was younger. And that led into eating disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, all sorts of stuff. And I remember lying on the floor of an empty pool on this island. I was working on Hamilton Island, and I went for a walk one night, and I was lying on the floor of the pool, looking up at the stars at, 3:00 in the morning, as you do. And
yeah, we all do that.
Yeah, totally. And I realized I was deeply depressed. I'd been on antidepressants there for a number of years. And I realized that I had three choices. I could continue as I was. I could finally kill myself, go through with all of those thoughts and average, sort of attempts, or I could get better. And when I really narrowed it down to like those three choices, it became so clear. I was like, okay, well, I'm definitely not continuing as I am because this sucks. There'd always been something that pulled me back from actually killing myself. And so that left option 3, which was, okay, well, if option 3 is really now my only option, then I will do whatever it takes to heal myself, body, mind, heart, spirit, every single level. And so that started me down this epic multi-decade journey of self-reclamation and deep physical. I had physical issues as well as emotional. And, so it was like these two strands of like this psycho-spiritual and also physical things that I was embarking on at the same time. So that was kind of the first bit. And then that activated this awareness, because then I was searching. And fast track a couple of years, I remember sitting on the couch of my parents' place, and I was watching TV, I don't know, Catalyst or some kind of thing on the ABC. And there was a segment of this program that talked about intergenerational epigenetics. And I remember at the time just having this, and how like the stories of our ancestors can be passed down our DNA. And I remember at the time just not being that interested. And then all of a sudden I heard that piece and it was like full body tingles. And then I didn't think about it again for probably 15 or maybe definitely 10 years. and then all of I dropped into all of these different pathways. I started specifically with my physical body around nutrition. And so I spent about 10 years deep diving into nutrition, trying all of the things. And I kind of got to the end of the nutrition journey. I was just like, you know what? I feel like food is like a big part, but it's definitely not the only part. And what am I missing? And so I was like diving into then like the microbiome and gut health and looking at the interplay between, gut health, physical health and emotional and mental health. And then I was just like, I don't even know how many thousands of dollars I spent on, gut healing and probiotics and prebiotics and all of the things. And it was like, okay, there's something deeper than this. So then I got down to like mitochondrial level, which is the powerhouses of the cell. And that took me into mitochondria and the influence of environment on our physical body, and the influence and how our environment can change our gene expression, which is epigenetics. Epigenetics is the science of gene expression, or I like to say it's it's like how we dance with life. And realizing at that point that everything in our world, starting for me, a big part was looking at light and different how light influences our gene expression. And that took me into becoming a trained therapist in photobiomodulation, which is red and infrared light therapy. I was never a nerd at school. I didn't do any science at school. It was all like humanities and drama. And it was just like, science is so boring. And then I turned into a complete nerd. And then, so I was looking at the interplay and also working as a colon hydrotherapist and ancestral nutrition. So I had this kind of grounding in that piece. And really started to explore epigenetics through like the physical lens. And that just opening up into epigenetics and how it's like, hey, it's not just light, it's not just our environment, it's everything. It's our internal environments. It's the thoughts that we think, it's the relationships that we have. It's everything. And at the same time as I was doing that, I was doing a year-long shamanic training. And through that, we had to track our mother line. And as I tracked my maternal lineage and looked at the stories of my maternal ancestry, I started to look into, I wonder if this is how, I'd heard the term ancestral trauma and I'd actually dismissed it because there's a big part of me that's like, stop blaming your stuff on everyone else and just take personal responsibility for your stuff. So I hadn't embraced ancestral trauma as a lot of other people around me had. But that point, I was just like, I wonder if this is the pathway, because previously it had been sort of ancestral trauma. I was like, it's just this vague kind of meh, meh, meh. But then I was just like, I wonder if epigenetics is the pathway for that to happen. So then I looked at that and I was like, yes, it is. There you go. The stories of our ancestors are literally passed down via epigenetics on our DNA. So then I was working in that. I was working with photobiomodulation and colonics and ancestral nutrition. So looking at, like, I guess, the physical aspect of epigenetics. And then at the same time, I was doing this sort of more shamanic, holding space and crafting with these ceremonies for people to, I guess, shift their intergenerational epigenetic imprinting and rewrite the patterning there. And then as I was doing that and working with clients, I actually had a client say to me, hey, have you heard about epigenetic profiling? I was like, no, what is this? Where do I go? And just immediately signed up. And it actually took me a couple of years. Like I dove in, I studied it, I applied it to my own life. And this is interesting, but the way that I am wired, epigenetically and hormonally wired, it took me a long time to actually deeply trust the system. And the system is it is pure science. So it's based on physical measurements of the human body. So 16 different measurements, like the measurement of your neck and your jawline and your head and your palm. And it's like very detailed. And then it's lifestyle, health, and ancestry questions. So it's not a personality test, and it's not astrology, and it's not human design. It's none of those things. It's pure science. And that's what I love about it, because it feels so grounded. Even though I definitely dance between the science and the spiritual, 100%, there's something about this that gives it this solidity, this solidity. And the beautiful thing about this complex profiling technology is that what it does, all of this, algorithmic, because it works with AI, and does this algorithmic patterning of like 10,000 data points, and what it comes out with is very clear, very specific guidelines that help you navigate 6 key areas of life, which is food, movement, environment, social connections and relationships, your work, your ideal work, and also your genius zone, what your natural talents are, and like an insight into how you are uniquely wired, and also how to prioritize and set up your world and meet life, I guess, in a way that is specifically tailored to you. So it was such a relief, because I was making up, like when I was working with it, I was like, I'm just trying to I'm trying to take my knowledge combined with my intuition to craft these things to support people. But this created this really simple step-by-step process for people. And so I just love how deeply profound and how incredibly simple the application actually is. So there you
go. Where do I start?
Where do you start?
I just love that you started the shamanic journey at the same time that you dive. It's like, of course you did, Of course you did. This question popped in. I mean, I want to dive into epigenetics more, but if epigenetics is like, like our expression of our DNA changes with environment, right? Our environment can change our DNA. So then would your measurements change over time? Yeah.
Okay. And what I love about the profiling technology is as you evolve, it evolves. So you can re-input your data and it will update it with new recommendations.
That is so cool.
It's so cool.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I don't even know where to start. Can you talk a bit more about so you obviously had to learn how to work with the application and learn about epigenetics. Can you, I don't know, unpack a bit more for our listeners, like how it can how it works to create those profiles, like for people to actually follow? Because, like, for example, you mentioned human design. So once you know your birthday, right, then you know, okay, this is your human design. This is how you've been, created. This is your personality, your profile. So with epigenetics, can you kind of explain that a bit more, how that works?
Yeah. So the process for getting it is through the physical measurements and the questions. And what that gives is really very precise data of how you developed from pretty much conception. And I would actually say, based on my understanding of intergenerational epigenetics, that there are layers. I mean, particularly when you recognize that you were an egg inside your mother's ovaries when she was still a baby inside her mother. So the egg, even an unfertilized egg, is still going to be taking on or it's going to be sitting in the environment that your grandmother was living. So the experience of your grandmother, the food she was eating, the light she was living under, the stress she was under, all of those things is going to be having an impact on us from before our mother was even born. But then once we get into the actual gestation, and the sperm and the egg come together and they form the zygote, and the early part is, or the very early part of development is that little combination now goes into three what they call germ layers. They have the ectoderm, which is your skin, your nervous system, and your brain. The mesoderm, which is your musculoskeletal system. That's kind of that's like the middle bit, and the endoderm, which is your the musculoskeletal system, and also your sex steroid hormones. And then your endoderm, which is your deeper organs and your digestive system and the hormones related to digestion and other organ function. And depending on the conditions of that is developing in, that a very early young baby, pre-baby is developing in, again, like the nutrition that your mother's eating, the stress she's under, the light she's under, all of those things, the latitude that she lives at, like everything, the time of year, that is going to influence which of those layers develops more dominantly. And there are hormones that will become more dominant in your system. And as you grow and develop, and we keep developing and we keep kind of evolving and changing until we have completed development. And so the dominant hormones can move and change as we grow, even as once we're out and we've been born and we're young children and then young adolescents. And that sort of determines, but over time you'll have one hormone out of six key dominant hormones that will become more dominant. Yeah. And that is where we really need to, unless you sit on the cusp, and then you might have two that are pretty equal. And when we understand what hormone is dominant in our system, we can then get some very clear guidance on how that wires us to be who we are physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, how our gut works, how our nervous system works, the parts of our brains that we use, the way we communicate, the way we digest food, whether we're prone to fight or flight, all of these things, and and actually how we physically look. So you can see that there are these sort of, there's like a continuum of how people look, but you can see that there are certain people that you could kind of cluster together that look kind of similar, and then other people that kind of look kind of similar. Well, those ones will have similar dominant hormones. And yeah, the beautiful thing about that is when we understand the hormones that are like the most dominant, then we can prioritize how we do things, like what area of our life, say, is food the most important thing for this person to focus on for their ultimate health, wellness, and flow, and to be in a great mindset and to feel good and be in a good place in the world? Or is it actually the, place or the environment they live in? Or is it fitness? Or is it their social life? It's really fascinating when I have people come to me for one thing, and food's a classic because everyone goes to food. Everyone goes straight to food for the solution for most of their problems, right? Particularly anything physically related. Yeah. And being able to say to people, hey, actually, you know what? Food is actually number 4. Like for me, food is not my number 4 priority. It's like there's a whole bunch of other things that I need to look at first. And yes, I need to pay attention to my food, but it's not where I put all of my attention. And it doesn't matter how good my food is. If I'm not looking after the way I set up my day and how much pleasure I'm feeling, then my body is going to be stressed, and the other things kind of go out the window. But if I really focus on my priorities, then my body will automatically go, happy days. So
that is so cool.
It is.
I'm just like mind blown at the moment.
I could just imagine like your chemist mind going.
Yeah, I'm like, I want a reading like right now. That's my brain at the moment going, I want a reading. Okay. What I want to ask, okay, can we do like a live example so that people can wrap their heads around a bit more? Because I know that for me, I'm someone that processes things really quickly. So if you tell me something, it won't take me long. I'm like, oh, I get it. But I think for most people, I found is that doesn't happen. And sometimes like they're like looking at me going, what is wrong? So can you give a live example? So I think like before we jumped on, we're like, oh, let's talk about relationships, for example. Right. So I think what I would like to know is like, so if you get a report like on, relationships, what would it actually tell you? Like, what are the details that like the level of details it gives you? And then does it give you like, tips on how to move forward? Like, if you can give us a bit of example of what it looks like to actually get a reading, and then obviously like, how you would work with your clients to move forward in that part of their that particular part of their life.
Cool. So the first thing, yes, is getting your profile, and we go through the process as I mentioned before, and then we just input that data into an app, and then you get your own profile on the app, and it gives you the 6 key areas that I spoke to. And when you go into those key areas, it'll give you 4 different clocks, chronobiology clocks. These are super important. The way that we design, like the clock that we run to is going to be different for everyone. And in terms of relationships, this was really key to understand in my relationship. And I'll explain a bit more of that in a minute. So you'll get a food clock, like when to eat, when to fast, when to just drink, when to, you'll get a food clock, you'll get a movement clock, you will get a general lifestyle clock, like how to be in lifestyle flow on an optimal day when you can choose to do anything you want. How would you ideally set it up? And then a genius clock. So when you really have something that you want to, bring into the world, when you want to be in flow for the purpose of creating something, how you would set that up to be like in your genius zone. So that's a key part of it. And then in each of those segments, the food segment, for example, you'll get a food list that is your specific, unique food list. And even people who are the same health type, who were ruled by the same dominant hormone, can have very different food lists depending on where they sit. And so you'll get a food list, you'll get a whole bunch of recipes designed that include all of those. You'll get guides on how to prepare your food. It's really very specific.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool. And
I'm like, I need this like right now. Stop talking, Genevieve. Just do my reading.
do
I'm doing
it.
it now. I'm sorry, keep going. I'm too excited.
And then you'll get a movement, so strength, cardio, stretching. There's like a movement breakdown of ideal movements for a specific purpose, how to create, like it can generate specific workouts for you. You can opt in and opt out different movements, so those kind of things. Going into the lifestyle section, which incorporates the way your mind works and your social and your environment and your genius. Then they have these, like, basically it's laid out like it has these little statements of you may be this, and then it'll have tips. So if this is true for you, and I actually really love, like, other people like, it just says may, and I'm like, for me, I feel that's really important because so many people hate to be told you are, and they feel quite resistant. So it's like, hey, this like could be true for you. And then it's like, yeah, that's actually pretty true. And then it'll give you a tip on how to meet that. And so that's in those key areas. The way I work is that people come in as under a container. I don't like working with people for just one-offs. I feel like it's so in depth that we need time to flesh it out and to, you know, to action some stuff and see what happens. We set up a profile, and then I do like a very basic, okay, cool, you've just come up with this at a top level. I haven't looked into anything more deeply at the moment, but here's some stuff to start with straight off. And then I go away and I go and like fuzzic in the background of someone else's profile, which is really fun. And I'm like, oh, look at that. And see, because we all have all of the hormones, it's not just, we don't just have one, we have all of them. It's just at different levels. So then seeing how the different, you know, the top one, but then like the secondary and the tertiary, or maybe for some people, it's just like, you know, secondary and first and second. Then, yeah, just seeing what the interactions are. And then I jump on another call with them and give them a feedback on like basically this kind of science-based intuitive download of what I see by reading those. Basically I interpret the statements. So, you know, like if you go in, get like a free astrology report, and you can look at these different sections. It's like, yeah, you got like your sun conjunct Mars or something, blah, blah, blah. But then then over here, I will say something kind of contradictory, and you're like, that actually doesn't make any sense in isolation. So I integrate those pieces and go, okay, cool. So there's this, and then there's this, and this is how that will work together, and this is probably how that will show up. And that's a big, deep, juicy session. And then from that, we can, what I love then work, because I really love working with people, with impact makers. That might come over, it's like, what are you here to do? Let's like make it, let's support you to do what you're like what your purpose is. And also just provide people clarity. What my partner calls it, it's like his life hack cheat sheet. And there's validation to know that him and his operating system are right for him, even though they might be completely different to mine. For example, we're like polar opposites. Of course, because that's what's exciting in relationships, is opposites. So yeah, so we have that download, and then some, depending on what they're looking at and what area they do want to focus on, then we'll come up with some core strategies based on their priorities and what, you know, I balance the spiritual and the science. It's just like, so I'm quite intuitive. But yeah, very clear. Okay, this is like your next step. So how that would then show up, like if someone came to me for a relationship, and if they're, you know, I'm going to actually use myself as an example. So I've been with my partner for 20 years, 3 sons, amazing. It's been an amazing relationship for nearly all of that time. We've danced really well in our polarity. And then this last year, it got really hectic and devastating, actually. And I spent, probably a good 8 months with my nervous system in total overdrive permanently. And I thought we were done, and it was absolutely devastating. Yeah, last year was hard. And we've done decades of personal development work, both of us. We've been sitting in men's and women's circles for years. We've done, my mum was a relationship psychologist. My partner's a lawyer, and, really beautiful, grounded, heart-centered man. We've done lots of spiritual work, just loads of stuff. Like, we're very equipped, kind of conscious. I don't know if I like using that word, but whatever, people. And yet we weren't equipped when it came to this. It was just like, what even? I don't get it. And it was, that was the point where I was previously working with epigenetic profiling more as emotional support, but, really this kind of holistic wellness perspective. But it was like, okay, I just actually need to understand what is going on with us and what's going on. So I deep dove into both of our profiles and really looked at them in relationship to each other and in relationship to, what was going on. Like, I really looked at them through that lens. And that was, I just had all of this like, oh, I get it. And this man that I've actually known since I was 12, we were high school sweethearts for 2 years, and then we broke up for 7 years, and I married someone else and had all my stuff go on, and then we got back together. So it's not like, we've known each other a really long time. And I was like, I realized how much I didn't know him, and I realized how much I didn't know myself, and how much I'd actually taken on about myself based on who I thought I should be culturally and also in relationship. And in unpacking the truth of my profile, and the beautiful thing is that it's science, and so it's not personal. It depersonalizes everything. So all of those things that could feel really personal kind of dissolve. And so I will give you like a really funny example. Like, my partner's wired by adrenaline and testosterone, and his secondary, which he sits right on the cusp of this, is oxytocin. So adrenaline and testosterone, these are like the warriors of the world. They're often impulsive, they're fiery, they get stuff done, they activate things, they're usually highly creative and like, yeah, let's dive in, let's make it happen. They're those kind of people that will, they're those kind of people. They also will often flare really quickly and go to like anger and rage and need to just spew stuff out. It's like, wah! And they, if they're allowed to do that and allowed to express in a really unrestrained way, they will move through their stuff very, very quickly. They can, they just sort of, it's like a flash in the pan, hot and fast and done. On the other side, and then oxytocin. So oxytocin wires us for connection and bonding and group harmony. So people who are oxytocin dominant have incredible mirror neurons, whereas people with adrenaline and testosterone actually are kind of a little bit devoid of mirror neurons. So people with oxytocin will often, as their number one hormone, are often incredible chameleons. They will see that because group harmony is what creates, and group harmony and social connection is what creates safety for them. They will often chameleon themselves to create harmony and become who they need to be in order to have group harmony, because that's where safety is. So he's kind of both of these things. And I actually see him, now that I'm aware of it, I can see him transition sometimes within the space of a minute between one and the next. It's like kind of wild. And then I sit on the other side, pretty much opposite that. And my dominant hormone is serotonin, which wires us for pleasure. And I have a whole bunch of theories around that, because diving into that has been really, really interesting. Anyway, so for me to get to a state where, let's say an example, let's bring out the example of road rage, because it's really hilarious. So my partner loves a bit of road rage. As someone wired by adrenaline and testosterone, that's actually, he has this he has this energy that flows through him, and he runs hot, and he needs to allow it to move. And if he doesn't allow it to move, it builds up, and then it can come out in really inappropriate ways, except that he had oxytocin, and so he would suppress it. So when he would allow the road rage to bubble up and like come out, it used to really throw me, because for me to get to a point where I'm, screaming at people in the car and telling them what a bit idiot they are, I'd be like, are you okay? Like, have I done something? Is there some like deep repressed thing that is just coming out in this space that you're not dealing with? Like, really? I take it really, it was really and I take it really personally. And then in understanding this, I'm just like, you're actually just having a really good time. Like, this is just actually like road rage is actually just fun for you. And now I can laugh at it, whereas previously I'd go like internalize it and go into this kind of shutdown place. And now I'm just like having fun. And he's like, yeah, that feels so good. I was like, great. So the shift that has had in our relationship, just in understanding him and understanding myself, has turned this big thing into like just this like entertaining little whatever. And it allows him to be free in being the truth of who he is. And it gives me the space to like not take on any stuff that actually isn't mine and was never mine to begin with. So yeah, that's a really cool, simple example.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's really good for, I guess though, for people who, navigating their relationships. I mean, you talked about it like that's, you are powered by pleasure. It's good for people to go, oh, that's how I'm powered. So even if you don't know someone else's epigenetic profile, because you wouldn't, you can still kind of stand in your own operating system. Yep. And not get affected by other people's operating system.
Yeah. And that was the key thing. And that is one of the key things that I support people with I created at the end of last year, after all the madness. I was like, man, people need this information. And so I created something called Relationship Translation, which is essentially a couples package, which is exactly what I do. I literally translate people's profile to themselves, but also to their partners. And the core thing of that is, how do we meet our needs outside of the relationship so that we can stand in the truth of our own sovereignty and our own inner strength, and not be not be unduly affected by whatever else is going on around us. And we need really different things to be able to do that. So, what's another good example? I was, a few months ago, one of the things that we learned in our relationship is how codependent we were. And I don't know if you've ever heard of like the drama triangle, but we kind of dove, you're familiar with the drama triangle?
No, but yeah.
Okay, we won't look at that. that's a long answer. So worth looking at though. So yeah, go Google the drama triangle and then go Google the reverse, like when you work with the drama triangle, what it can turn into. It's really cool information. But I realized that what happens for me if I get really shaken up, and I can go into, because my dominant hormone is serotonin, and serotonin is really the hormone to regulate to avoid depression.
Yeah.
If I'm in a situation that really kind of hammers my serotonin levels, for whatever reason, then I need to I need to do whatever it is I need to do in order to re-regulate those. And I remember one time I actually presented a talk for the industry conference for pH360 epigenetic profiling, and about our relationship. And I'd shared some pretty vulnerable stuff in it. And I got off and sort of my nervous system settled a bit. It was late at night. I was in my bedroom. We now have separate bedrooms. That was a whole pH3. That was a whole thing that we worked out, which I'm so all about now. And I was in my bed and I was coming down, my nervous system was coming down. And then I started to go into a little bit of a spiral of self-doubt. It's like, is that okay? Did I say the right things? Did I represent him really well? I wanted to make sure he was represented in a really positive light. And so I had some anxiety. I pretty much didn't sleep that night. Now, we'd had a really beautiful day the day before, and we really connected. And then, so he came down early in the morning for snuggles in the morning. And I was just lying there, and my nervous system was still kind of racing, and I barely slept. And I could feel myself wanting to go into this old habit of seeking comfort with him. It was that's kind of the easy comfort. And our old pattern was I would seek comfort, and he would kind of be my rescuer. And, I'd talk things through, and he'd kind of be a bit of a problem solver for me and reassure me. And I could feel that part of me that wanted him to do that. But that was actually part of our codependency pattern, and it was really not serving either of us. And there were many, many layers to that, which are for another time. But I could feel myself going into that. And I just said to him, I'm actually feeling really shaken. I would love to stay here and have cuddles, but truth be told, I'm leaning into you for comfort because I'm not feeling great in myself. Do you want that? And he stopped for a minute and said, yeah, no. I was like, great. And I was actually so relieved that he said that, because I didn't want it either. But I was in a bit of a vulnerable state that self-worth is one of the core wounds of people who are serotonin dominant, they're called diplomats. And our hormones dictate our core wounds, by the way. It's very interesting. So when my nervous system and when my self-worth is and my serotonin is knocked a bit, then my vulnerability levels are much higher, and I find it a lot more difficult, as we all do, to stand in my own, to claim my own needs.
Yeah.
So when he said, no, I don't want that, it was like, great, actually, it feels so much better. And so he left. I went out my back door, and one of the core ways to regulate serotonin is to go for a beautiful, long, gentle walk, ideally on your own in nature, and to do some, structured breathing exercises, and just to allow, there's something about nature that, and being particularly in the sunshine, just does magic. So I was able to meet my needs for serotonin regulation outside of the relationship. And what I have discovered is in the process of in the process of understanding what I need and being able to communicate to my partner, this is when I'm vulnerable or my self-worth has been knocked, or I'm going into a bit of a serotonin spin. This is probably how I'm going to be, so that so that you can support me without actually compromising yourself. So for him, it's like, why don't you go, I'm going to leave. You just do what you need to do. great, I'm going to take myself for a walk. And I just took as long as I needed to. And I did not step back inside that house until I was ready. I was like, oh, okay, I've gone through everything. I've come to, peace with what I said, and I feel really calm. So I can walk back in from a place of sovereignty and inner strength.
Mm.
Absolute game changer. And then he wasn't responsible for making me feel better. And I wasn't feeling like I should stay because I didn't want to make him feel bad by going, actually, I just want to leave and do my own thing and I don't need your help. And yeah, it's just taken the pressure off us needing to do anything for the other person other than recognize, oh, hey, this is a thing for you right now. Cool. Like, I'm going to be over here. Or, maybe sometimes it's a good reminder. It's like, hey, do you need to, for me, I often will ask him, do you need to express something? And if I'm in a good space and have capacity to hold that without taking any of it on or needing to do anything with it, then I'll offer that. It's like, hey, I'm in a good space at the moment. You can freely express to me if you'd like right now. But I can also say, feels like you need to just really express and let rip, or maybe do some dynamic movement or something like that to allow this energy to run through you. I'm not in a space to do it. Do you have someone else that you could contact right now, or somewhere that you can, how can I support you in a way that is, that is still supporting myself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Like the communication that you can have with your partner, your husband around, like, just, yeah. And even if, like, for you, when you say, oh, if I'm not in a good space, you're still holding that space for him, like, in that way, by being honest and truthful and allowing him to go off, because that is still holding space, but just in a, different way. So I just love what you are able to get out of, just giving that, just a few examples of how it has helped to change your life and create more harmony in your family environment. That is just a game changer. And yeah, I'm just like so blown away by it. And I'm like looking at the time going, I've got so many more questions that I want to ask you. But with the measurements, how precise do you need to be? Because, like,
I did pretty precise.
Yeah.
Most of my clients are in the States, actually. I've got a lot of international clients, and the poor things, I'm always like, you need because you use a tape measure, and they are working on the technology. They're currently building out the technology to do it just by photographs, which will be awesome, but they're not quite there yet. And so we're still doing both. But yeah, so I'm always telling my American clients, like, you need to get a tape measure that has centimeters and
metric
meters on it
system.
You need the metric system because, the imperial system is just so not precise enough at all. So we are getting down to millimeters.
Yeah. Okay. Getting down to, yeah. Wow. I'm just looking at the time. So unfortunately, I have to wrap things up. So, but would love for you to come back and just talk more about this. Another time. Before we wrap up, Genevieve, what's the key takeaway you want our listeners, our audience, to take with them today after listening to our conversation?
So many things. I feel like there's two core statements. One is your body is always on your side. So often women, and even awakened women, are in this war with our bodies. And yet, if we actually just understand our bodies at a really deep level, and what I love about this profiling technology is it allows us to do that. It takes away the mask of our identity and gives us the actual truth. And then we can start loving our bodies in the way that they desire to be loved, in very, very simple but very powerful ways. And really understanding that our body desires nothing more than to be loved in the way it wants to be loved. And when we do that, when we just come into flow of our unique genius, that our body will do remarkable things. I was speaking to another woman who did pH 360 to heal her hepatitis C in her 50s, and it worked. So that's sort of, I guess, the physical aspect. And then on the other side is one of my other core phrases is, you are the one that you have been waiting for. And this, what I love bringing, the ultimate aim of me, my ultimate driver in life is to be here for the evolution of humanity, to help rebalance the masculine and the feminine, and to inspire the possibility of the impossible, and to be part of the great remembering. These are kind of core things that I keep having downloads that, like, this bit, and I've never really understood exactly what they mean. You know, when you get these downloads and you're like, well, what even is that? What? And there are many pathways home to ourselves, but what I love about this pathway is it fast tracks. It takes away so much guesswork and so much confusion. So it allows us to get into the true heart of who we are, so we can actually start living our genius, start living our potential, and start being who we came here to be.
Mm.
And that's how we're going to evolve humanity, is by us cutting away the confusion and coming into clarity of our own unique genius and living our authentic truth and feeling the validation in ourselves of that. And that is available. That is available to every single person, every single woman, man, whatever, whoever is listening to this, that is available. And we need as many people on the ground aligned to the truth of who they are if we're going to shift this world and evolve humanity. And what I hope to offer is, people through even just this is the knowledge that you are vital in this whole game of life and humanity's evolution. You are absolutely vital. And there are pathways for you to be able to get there that actually can be really very, very simple.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I was getting like goosebumps as you were talking. Yeah, so important. Yeah, everything that you've mentioned is, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. So whilst I don't want this conversation to end, but it has to for now, Genevieve, thank you so much for sharing your love and wisdom with us today. If people want to find out more about you, how they can work with you, where's the best place to go?
Instagram, Facebook, or just go straight to my website, which is The Optimization Queen, spelled with an S, Australian spelling, theoptimizationqueen.com.
Awesome.
Otherwise, Genevieve, The Optimization Queen on Instagram, or just Genevieve Searle is my personal Facebook page. And I'm like, I'm open for friends.
Awesome. I'll have all your details in the show notes so people can reach out to you. Thank you once again for this amazing conversation.
Such a pleasure. Thank you. And thank you for you and your work and what you're doing. It's important and it's valuable and it's impactful.